Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
What's up, everybody? This is your co-host, Ashley Lunar Goddess, Gorilla Girl filmmaker and horror-loving cinephile. I'm just your average podcast-producing badass.
I'm John Thomas. Some would say that I go a little too far with my love of all things horror, paranormal, and meta, but I say, talk nerdy to me, and I'm all yours.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and all of our haunted pals out there? In today's episode, we'll be discussing paranormal investigations with special guest Kris Sumner, founder of Soul Sisters Paranormal. Join us as we dive into this ghostly world.
But first, a word from our network sponsor.
Are you looking for more awesome podcasts? Head on over to withoutyourhead.com for access to the Without Your Head podcast network, where you'll find a variety of podcasts sure to keep you entertained and coming back for more. All right, bring us back, John.
Welcome back, everybody. Like Ashley said, we have special guest Kris Sumner from Soul Sisters Paranormal. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, welcome, Kris. This is really exciting. Over the years, we've talked to guests about, how we found them and how that kind of those worlds collided. And for me, it's been fun because a lot of our guests that we have found have been either through other people or some kind of social media network, which I absolutely love. And so for us, I stumbled upon you on Facebook.
Yes, I am very active on Facebook.
It's really neat because I had put a call out there, looking for guests, and you had responded. But what I found funny is we were already Facebook friends. Because I think a while ago, was it Jeremy Bryant? He had recommended that Kris be on our show.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had added Kris, and then it's time. And I thought about season 4, we're going to get Kris on season 4. And then it's time for season 4. But the serendipity that you then responded, hey, I do paranormal investigations. That was pretty cool.
It just all kind of works out. I love it.
It did. It all worked together. So let's just jump right in. How long have you been doing paranormal investigations?
Since 2013. So it actually started as a girls' trip. My sisters and I, we've always been fascinated with the paranormal, always had a belief in the afterlife. And we would watch the popular television shows, Ghost Hunters, Taps, all of that. And we found ourselves saying, why didn't they ask these questions? Why didn't they go into this location? Why didn't they use these trigger items? And all three of us have a very deep research background. And so we said to ourselves, if we ever had the opportunity to conduct a paranormal investigation, we'd jump on that chance. And because we live in different parts of the country, we routinely take girls' trips. We meet up in different areas just to have a fun girls' weekend. And one weekend we were in Moundsville, which is where the West Virginia State Penitentiary is located. Coincidentally, we had a family friend that sat on the board of that facility, and he said, while y'all are here for the weekend, why don't you take one of your nights and stay in the penitentiary and see if you can connect with our spirits? So we absolutely jumped at that chance. It was a very rudimentary investigation. We had some night vision cameras, a couple of digital voice recorders, nothing major, but we left that experience with what we felt was compelling, unexplained phenomena that occurred that night. And so we said to ourselves, let's do this. Let's formalize a team. So we came up with the name Soul Sisters Paranormal, and we came up with our theme music because we felt like we wanted to, as best we could, try to elevate the paranormal into a more mainstream conversation. And I believe that, we started that night really kind of formulating what we wanted to do. And since 2013, we've been doing it and having a blast.
So now your girls' trips are going to haunted, spooky places.
Absolutely. That's it exactly.
I love that.
Love it.
That's my kind of girls' trip. It's just hey, we're going to go to haunted places. Now, I don't know if I want to stay the night there, but it would be really cool to go tour these places with people that you have connections to. So you said you had the digital equipment and the night vision. When did you collect it? Were you doing stuff on your own that you had that equipment beforehand, or did you get it for that trip?
We actually got it for that trip. We took a detour to Walmart, and like when I say night vision camera, it was literally a child's toy that we had found in the little science section of the Walmart there, and it was just a little camera. And then we bought some voice recorders because it was kind of an unexpected situation, and that was really it. Because you see these things on television shows, and you want to follow their lead a little bit, but you kind of want to do your own thing as well, kind of make it your own. And that's really what we do from now on with our investigations. But so we did kind of mirror some of the stuff that we had seen on television. But we really didn't need that much equipment. Some of the stuff that we were capturing was really audible. The footsteps that we were capturing, the disembodied voices that we were capturing, the personal experiences that we were having that night, it was extremely compelling. And like I said, to be able to experience those things and then say, okay, what we want to do is really highlight that for first our family. Because when we started this, it really wasn't supposed to be as big as Soul Sisters has become. It was really just us getting together and having these interesting experiences in historic locations because we all love history as well. And my family started saying, well, what was it like? What did you feel? What did everything look like? Because we were telling them what we were capturing. And so I really put together the first video as a means to show my family. I put it on YouTube and gave them a link to it just for them to see it. And they're like, well, this is fantastic. Why don't you put all of your investigations on? And that's really what we did. And then, slowly but surely people started watching it and liking it, and there you go. But to go back to your question, that very first investigation, we literally stopped by the Walmart and got some stuff for that night.
I love that though, that you didn't need much, right? It was
No.
so active, you didn't need much.
Yeah, I know how that goes.
Yeah, West Virginia really speaks to you.
It's one of my bucket lists for sure. I do paranormal investigating as well.
Cool.
So yeah, I know all about the Walmart stops, trying to find what you can, getting your recorders and all of that, your cameras, your batteries, everything, just whatever you can find. And people don't realize that it actually works, and it's not bad for starting off. So you don't have to go with all the expensive stuff right off the bat.
No, you don't. I mean, if the spirits are going to speak with you that night, you don't need anything fancy. Now, granted, Soul Sisters over the years has collected a mass of equipment,
absolutely.
and it's just like a tattoo. You get one, you need three more, right? So kind of like a REM pod. You get one, you need three more. So we have amassed a pretty good equipment portfolio, but it really. The best evidence that we've captured through most of our investigations have been EVPs on a voice recorder. And that is if somebody asks me, what's the one tool that you would never give up? It's the voice recorder, because, light anomalies, there are things that we can debunk them with, right? There's always some type of plausible explanation that you can come up with. But when you're in a location with 4 other females and you know that there's no men on the property, yet you're capturing men's voices, or a child's voice when you know that there's none on the property, that's extremely hard to debunk and to come up with an explanation for. So for us, the EVPs and the voice recorders are definitely our most popular tool.
Yeah, I think we've been there, like inadvertently accidentally capturing voices and being like, hold on. And I love it when you have multiple cameras, different perspectives, because, again, the debunking, it's like, well, maybe that came from this person, because maybe there was one male in the group, but you go to that male's camera and realize he's not talking. That's not coming from his area. And it's like, oh, that wasn't, oh, wow. So yeah, it can be pretty exciting. So for you, with that first evening, was there a specific moment that really stood out to you, like a personal experience?
Oh, absolutely. So in West Virginia, the second floor was the medical unit where they, provided medicine. The pharmacy was up there. So in order to get medical treatment, you would have to go up to the second level. And so it's accessed on either side by 2 very large steel and concrete staircases. So the staircases go up, there's a landing, and then it turns around. And so a typical commercial grade staircase, right? So we're sitting in the middle of that second floor, and it's completely dark. And so we started saying things like, it's time to take your medicine, come up and take your medicine. And all of us that night are in this group, in this room, and just footsteps started thundering up the stairs. Could not explain it at all. We know that nobody else is on the property, and yet they're coming up the stairs, and they're so prevalent that you're waiting for something to materialize in front of you. That's how loud and thunderous they are, and they just stop, and there's nothing there. And so that was extremely compelling. We got those on recordings. Disembodied voices. We're down in the boiler room underneath the main section there, and my little sister had her hair pulled, and so that was kind of interesting. So that was her personal experience. So being touched was really big that night as well. Now, we have since returned and have done some more investigations there, but that first night is really what catapulted us into all of this.
I mean, how creative, right? Because like in some of these paranormal shows, oftentimes to try and get activity, it's really sometimes it's antagonizing,
Mm-hmm.
yelling at, challenging spirits. But I love that there was a creative way that you did that where it's, hey, it's time to take your medicine.
Mm-hmm.
To really try and trigger that activity. Like that's pretty creative. That I would never think to do something like that, like to be in that moment to try and incite that in a way that isn't antagonizing, but might actually get activity, almost like to summon up an echo of some sort. Like that's really neat.
Oh, and that's absolutely right. So for us, when you go into these locations, you don't need to go in with a provoking attitude. We don't go in with bravado. We don't go in with, thumping our chest saying, we're not going to believe you unless you throw this chair across the room. That's not how we operate at all. Our mindset when we go in is, one, we're entering this historic location that we have the honor of having a very tactile experience with during the night. So we get to touch the doorknobs that Lizzie Borden touched. We get to stay in the cells that prisoners in Moundsville were in, or go into the rooms that Tala asylum seekers were in. So all of that's our first method or reason for doing this, is to have that experience, that historical experience. And then the next reason, we go in and we want to have these almost relationships with the spirits. We don't want to provoke them. We're going into their location and we respect that. And so we go in and we say, listen, we are not here to provoke you. We are legitimately here to tell your story. If you want to communicate with us, we are here through the night to communicate with you. If you don't, completely understandable. We really treat them like they're still here with us, and we communicate with them that way. Another thing that we really pride ourselves on is trigger items. So to your point, asking specific questions or questions that are designed to elicit a response. Going back the second time to West Virginia State Penitentiary, there was a prisoner in there by the name of Red Snyder. Really bad guy. He was the leader of the Aryan Brotherhood. He was in there for murdering his family. He was in solitary confinement. Really bad guy. But he had two vices in life. The first one was tobacco, and the second one was watching Days of Our Lives. And so every day they would wheel a television into his cell, or in front of his cell. He'd watch Days of Our Lives, and then they'd wheel the television out. So we knew this. And so what we did, and we're the first team to ever do it, we downloaded an episode of Days of Our Lives onto our laptop. And we put it in his cell and we said, Red, this is for you. We're going to let you enjoy this episode, and we're going to go do our thing somewhere else. So we let it run for him for an hour. And we made sure that I only had an hour of battery life on the laptop, because I wanted everything to close down and die after the episode was finished. So there was no electronic interference at all. So the episode showed, the laptop died, and we captured some really cool EVPs on the voice recorder that we left in the room. And then when we came back, we said, did you see what we left you? And we got a response of yes. And then we started doing a K2 session with our K2 meters, having a really interesting session back and forth with who we believe with Red Snyder. And at the end of the session, you hear me say, we have to go, but thank you for communicating with us. Thank you. And behind us, a man's voice said, no, thank you. Wasn't one of our group at all. And so we think that because we recognized what he liked and gave him what he liked in life, we got the respect of a communication with him.
Can I say I just love that you played Days of Our Lives for a ghost?
Yeah, and I mean, we that's what we do, you know, we try to find those things that connect with them on a human level. So even though they're not here physically, you know, they still have that we can still have that human connection with them. Taking water or cigarettes or tobacco, whiskey into prisons here in Tennessee, for example, or moonshine into Tennessee prisons. It's a big thing. Dolls or toys where we know that there's children spirits, just really trying to come up with different methods of really humanizing this whole experience for both them and us.
That's really awesome and powerful. I imagine
Hmm.
that does help create more
Hmm.
connections because your intention is to connect. And I really love this idea that you're going in with the intent to tell their story, right? Because with that intention, you probably are going to approach investigations and what your avenue is based on that intention differently than someone who's like, I just want evidence of a, throne chair,
Hmm.
or I want to be thrilled and spooked and all of those things. Like, you're coming in from a very almost like journalistic
And that's a
element.
great way to say that. So historic journalism, right? That's exactly how we approach it. You know, one of the examples of that is we were the very first team to investigate the Ma Barker house in Central Florida. So this was the site of the 1935 shootout between two members of the Barker Karpus gang, Ma and Fred, and members of the FBI. So the Barker Karpus gang was the most prolific gang during the late 1920s, early 1930s. They actually amassed more money than all of the other gangs of the time period combined. But they were in 1934. They went on the run from J. Edgar Hoover, and the gang split up. And Ma and Fred went to this very nondescript little house in a very small town called Ocklawaha, Florida. So on January 16th, 1935, the FBI agents tracked them down. They surrounded the house. A gun battle ensued, which is still the longest gun battle in FBI history. And Ma and Fred were killed in the upstairs bedroom of this house. And so the house was preserved. The family actually had the presence of mind to preserve the house. So you can go into it today, still see the bullet holes. There's bullet holes. The furniture still has bullet holes in it. You can match it up with the holes in the wall. So it's almost pristine, as almost like a time capsule, if you will, to that shootout date. Anyway, long story short, we were the first team to investigate this house. So we went in. I had a mindset of going in to the anniversary date, and so we set up equipment on the night of January 15th and let it run by itself through the morning of January 16th, which would have been the anniversary of the shootout. And so when we went back and we looked at that equipment, we were capturing EVPs, we were seeing light anomalies, and there's nothing in the house. We had complete control of this environment. And so then my sister and I, we went back 2 weeks later and did the same thing. We started asking questions. And I said, what is your story? What happened in this house? And through the spirit box, we got a voice saying, they murdered us, we the ones dead. So that is their story, right? So the FBI did shoot them down, but in their minds, they're murdered. So that is the story. And we told them, we're here to tell your story. And that's what they gave us. And so for me, that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to tell their side of the story if they're willing to give us that information.
That's really cool. So, given that you go into different locations and you're taking in history and trigger objects, I imagine most of your interactions you are pulling in, if not all, spirits that you're intending to connect to. But have you ever inadvertently attracted spirits or maybe human entities
Mhm.
in those interactions? Have you ever attracted any of those?
No, not to our knowledge. So when we go in, we set our intentions right through when we go through the threshold of the location, and we say, "Listen, we are here to legitimately tell the story of this location, and we're here to legitimately tell the story of any spirit that wants to communicate with us. You are not allowed to go home with us. You are not allowed to touch us or harm us in any way. We just want to connect with you. If you don't want to talk to us, that's fine." And when we leave, we say pretty much the same thing. Thank you for interacting with us. We're leaving. You are not allowed to come home with us. Because I think we set those expectations from the beginning, we haven't interacted with anything that has been malicious or threatening to us in any way. Now, that being said, there are locations where we'll have like a get out, or no talking or something like that. And we respect that. And we say, okay, we're not going to go into that location. One that comes to mind is Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. So there is a location in Brushy Mountain that is said to be a little bit darker. And there's a spirit in there that does not like to communicate with investigators. So what we did is we went in, we put a voice recorder in the room or the auditorium and said, we know that you don't like people here. We're leaving a voice recorder in this room if you want to say anything to us. But otherwise, we recognize that this is your space and we're not going to come in for the night. And so we didn't go into that area for the night. We had, I mean, Brushy's huge. So we had other locations on the property that we can investigate, but we honored his or that entity's essentially request to nobody come into this location. And so that's how we handle those things. But, we've never run out of a location screaming. We've never felt the need to be cleansed or anything like that. We've never had anything attack us or harm us in any way. And I think that's because we go in with a respect level.
How did you learn the process of your investigation in terms of we go in, we set the intention, we very clearly vocalize this is what we're doing, and then how to end it in terms of you're not allowed to follow us home? Like, where did you pick up or learn those practices to protect yourself?
I don't think it's something that we really picked up on. I think it's just something that we kind of innately know. And by that, I mean, if we go into somebody's house, a living person, right? If I were to come into your house today, I'm not just going to throw the door open, march myself in, sit myself on the couch, put my feet up on the chair and say, hey, I'm here, let's chat. Right. That's not what we're going to do. And so when we go into a location, like I said, we're approaching it with that same mindset, right? We're going into these spirits' location, whether they're there for whatever reason, it's that where they have chosen to reside. And so when we go in, we're here to talk to you. That's all we want to do. We're going to sit here. We're going to ask some questions. And so I think it's just something we kind of innately just kind of started doing as a respect for, again, both the location and the spirits that reside within.
Yeah, but I think when you go into somebody's house, you don't know who you're going to meet. Like, you know who you're going
Yeah.
in terms of this is who I'd like to visit, but you don't always, know, oh, jerk face brother's there too, or something, the mean dog. Like there's things that we can't account for.
Mhm.
So I love that what you're doing when you go in is you're being very clear with who you're trying to connect to, so that potentially that assists you in blocking out anything else that might be present.
Yeah. And, I think that television right now and YouTube and TikTok and all of those, there is a sensational level and it has to be. First, it started with the television shows. Their entire reason for being is to sell advertising space. In order to do that, they need viewers. In order to get viewers, they have to do something dramatic on every episode, right? If John, if you've been a paranormal investigator and you go into these locations, it's literally 8 hours of sitting there talking to the dark. Very rarely do you jump up and say, oh my God, I'm out of here, right? It's not like that, but you've got to make it like that. Otherwise viewers are going to turn out or tune out.
Right. Exactly.
And so I think television started to really sensationalize it. I think TikTok and YouTube have some of those individuals, not all of them, but some of them have become about the shock factor. I mean, just go onto YouTube and look at the thumbnails, right? Everybody's standing there with their mouth agape and, things flying behind them. And that's not how it is. And so, like I said, for us, it is one of those things where you've got to have that respect level going in. And we just kind of knew that going from the get-go. It's just one of those things that we've kind of, like I said, innately knew.
When would you say you had your first, because I know you said you were watching the shows and had interest. When was your first actual paranormal experience?
At West Virginia State Penitentiary.
That was your first one?
Yeah.
Wow.
So my parents really raised us to have open minds. I mean, I will say we're Christians. We're all Christians. They let us decide what that religion looks like for us. I personally believe that when we die, there is a heaven, but I don't think all spirits go to that heaven immediately. There are some instances where we're allowed to stay back, or for some reason we're held back. So, for us, I've never we never really grew up having a haunted house or anything like that where something was appearing to us on a daily basis. But we were always fascinated with the afterlife, what comes next, and knew that there is something out there. And because energy can't be created or destroyed, it has to go somewhere. And for those that are staying behind, that energy does have the ability to communicate with us. And so again, just kind of watching those shows, it was like, okay, there are others out there that think like us, that are trying to research this as well. But we wanted to kind of take it a little step further. And so that's why when we went to West Virginia, and we had the experiences that we had, we decided that we really wanted to, like I said, as best we could, turn this into a more professional conversation if we could.
So you've been doing this 10 years now.
Yeah.
Happy anniversary.
Thanks. Yeah.
In all of your experiences over the past 10 years, have you ever received any messages that were geared specifically to you?
Yeah. And that's a great question. So my granddaddy died in 1986, and he was obviously married to my Nana, my grandmother. We called her Nana, and I was very close with Nana. In fact, I'm named after her, and so I was always very close with her growing up. And in 2016, I had this very vivid dream, the most vivid dream I've ever had in my life. And granddaddy came to me in the dream. It happened 3 nights in a row. He came to me in this dream, and it was a very specific location in the house that they lived in. And it was his office, his upstairs office. And the first night he appeared in this dream, I almost thought it was a nightmare because he didn't say anything. He just kind of looked at me and walked and turned out and turned and went through the wall. But this dream was so real. I can tell you how the drawstring on his pants was tied, how what pictures were on the wall behind him. That's how vivid this dream was. And so it happened again the next night. And so that day I was talking to my mom and I said, man, for the last 2 nights, I've had this crazy dream about granddaddy, and it's the exact same thing. And so just off the cuff, she said, well, if it happens again, just ask him what he wants. And it was just kind of like a little flip in it. Just ask him what he wants. And so the next night, same dream. And he came to me, and in the dream, I said, granddaddy, what do you want? And he said, I'm waiting on your Nana. You're going to be getting a call soon. And he turns and he walks out of the wall. And I don't really know what to do with that information. I told mom, I said, it happened last night. This is what he said. And we really didn't really think anything of it. Well, about 2 weeks later, Nana had an accident. She pretty much shattered her hip, and she was 94 at the time. And she never really recovered from that. She went into hospice. And while she was in hospice, she was talking about seeing granddaddy. And so when she passed, like literally 3 hours after she passed, we're still sitting in the hospice room. I looked at Jenny and I said, I know where she went. She went to the house to meet up with granddaddy. And I asked my family, I said, will you allow us to go to the house and take some of our equipment? And they said yes. So we grabbed some K2s. We went over to the house. We stood in the spot that was depicted in my dream. And we had 2 K2s, a black one and a gray one. And they were literally we're holding them about 2 feet apart. So if any energy is acting on them, they should go off at the same time. So we started asking questions, and the REM pods started going off. I said, Nana, are you here? REM pods go crazy, or K2s go crazy. I said, are you with granddaddy? K2s go crazy. I said, okay, stop on the gray one and just go to the black one. Are you here with granddaddy? It goes nuts. And I said, stop on the black, go to the gray. Same thing, went nuts. And so through a series of questions, we determined that granddaddy and Nana had met up in that location, and then they ascended to what is next, because we went back a week later, because we want to be scientific about this. We went back a week later with the exact same tools, stood in the exact same spot, and asked the exact same questions, and nothing happened. Not a blip on our K2 meters at all. And so for me, that was a very personal experience. I think that I was meant to get the dream because, again, I was extremely close with Nana. And for me, that allowed me to say, okay, she's fine. She is, it really, it calmed me down. I was not as emotional about it because I'm like, listen, granddaddy met her. So they went, they're gone, they're good. And so for me, that was a very personal experience.
I love that your mom was just like, well, just ask him what he wants.
Yeah. And that's my mom. Yeah.
So simple about it.
She's just a little like, here's your solution to your problem. Just ask him. And that's how it happened. Like I said, it was, I can draw out everything in that dream. It is the most vivid thing I've ever had. It was so real. I could know what he smells like. It was the most vivid dream I've ever had.
That's pretty amazing.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's actually really powerful.
Hmm.
And it has to feel good that you know your loved one is taken care of. So,
Right. And for me, there's always going to be those questions. Even through the paranormal experiences that we've had, there's always going to be those questions of what comes next, right? Because we're all going to die, we're all going to experience this, and none of us know for sure what's going to happen. So for me, it did a couple of things. One, it let me know that Granddaddy and Nana were okay, and that two, we don't transition alone. That I think that somebody that we loved is going to be there to help us with that transition. It's not going to be something that we're by ourselves for to try to figure out alone. Those were the two very powerful takeaways that I had from that.
so do you tend to investigate locally more, or do you actually, because it's girl trips, do you just go anywhere and everywhere?
We go everywhere. Yeah, we go everywhere. So we've been to Massachusetts, New York, Iowa, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky. We've been everywhere.
Have you found that there is a common type of place that tends to have more activity? Or is it just, it's a free for all? It can be anywhere, anything.
I think it can be anywhere or anything, honestly. There are specific locations. Specifically for me, I do think that jails and prisons hold a little bit different energy just because, one, most of them tend to be in use for long periods of time. And the energy throughout is different and transitional. So you don't have the same, like Lizzie Borden house, right? So that energy is really confined, I think, to Lizzie and her family. So you go in, you know who you're going to try to communicate with, you know who you think is still there. Prisons and jails are a little bit different because it was so transitional. You don't have the same person in the same cell for 40 years, right? For the most part, they transition out, they move to different cells, they die, they get killed or whatever. So I do think that there's a lot of energy. In fact, I'm sitting in a jail right now, a jail that I co-own in Tennessee, and it's very active here. So we have things happen here on a daily and nightly basis. And so for me, I think that those type of establishments are a little bit different in the activity that you get.
I love that you casually just say, I co own this jail in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of activity there?
Yes, we do. We're listed as the top 5 haunted location in the state. Yeah.
That's awesome. I feel like John's like, I sense a 3Haunted road trip coming up.
Come on, let's go.
I mean, I've not done a prison yet, so I definitely want to.
I think I've only ever been to Alcatraz. So
Alcatraz is phenomenal. The Alcatraz has the best audio tour of any historic location that I've ever been to. In fact, when I used to teach at Metro State College of Denver and at UCF, I taught criminal justice classes, and I bought that DVD from Alcatraz to play in my classes because it was just a very great example of penitentiary life.
I don't have comparison, like any kind of basis of comparison, because I haven't gone to tour any other
Gotcha.
prisons, but I have taken the audio tour and I thought it was phenomenal.
Mhm.
The experience, because at first, you show up and it's like, do I want this? I'm going to walk around with headphones on. This just, I don't know. But once I started listening to it, like from the moment it starts and you hit
yeah.
play, it just pulls you
Oh
in.
yeah.
And by the end of the tour, it's like, oh, that's all?
I know.
What? I want to hear more.
I'm telling you, anybody that I speak to about Alcatraz, like, did you take the audio tour? No, go back and take the audio tour. I don't care how you get there, get to Alcatraz and take the audio tour. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. I didn't know you could buy the
Mhm. Yeah,
tour, so
they're having a gift shop at the DVD.
I'm gonna have to go back and get it. That was an absolutely amazing experience. They have the night tours, but they just started incorporating later night tours.
Yeah.
So I'd like to go back and do the evening tour, like the
Mhm.
late evening tour. That'd be really neat.
Yeah, and
Yes, count me in.
go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was saying yes, count me in on that one.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a great location, and I'm glad that they started to realize that paranormal tourism, because this is something that I've been studying for a couple years now, paranormal tourism and historic preservation, that the funds are there, right? People, the interest is there, that these buildings can be preserved through getting this revenue, this after dark revenue. For the longest time, Alcatraz wasn't doing nighttime stuff, but now they have incorporated that, and it thrills me that they're doing that.
Yeah, it's a pretty phenomenal place.
Mhm.
I loved the visual aspects of it. Like for me, I love old buildings, rocks, ruins, stuff like that. So having that, there's one section that stood out to me where it's overlooking the cliff. I think it was the warden's house, where it's now just like dilapidated, falling apart stones, but they've turned it into a garden too.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got these rocks falling down, but then these huge, beautiful flowers and plants. And it's just that juxtaposition of the ruins and the blooming life is just, it's beautiful. I'm a nerd. I love Alcatraz.
Yeah, like I said, it's a great location. I've been there a couple of times.
Yeah, I would recommend it, even for people that aren't into the paranormal. You definitely feel the energy there. So if you're looking for paranormal, it's there, yeah. But definitely the history.
The paranormal is bonus, but the historical narrative of that location is just insane. Love it.
Yeah, I completely agree. So what was the most recent place you've been to, other than your own jail?
Well, you're right. I'm here on a daily basis. So my sister and I, we actually just investigated Hillview Manor in Pine Castle, Pennsylvania. It was really cool. So my sister and I were twins. And so every year in Ohio, there's this festival called the Twinsburg Festival. It's for twins. It's an annual meetup of twins. It's the largest gathering of twins in the world every year. So we've been going for several years. So we met some other twins there. So this was an investigation where we had another set of twins with us. So we had two sets of twins in a haunted location. And so it was actually really fun. I'm still going through all of the audio and video of that location. So we've captured several good EVPs. I'm still going through to see if we captured anything on camera, but that's just a great location for us to investigate.
That takes a lot of patience.
It does.
To go through all of that and listen to that. I feel like John has more patience for that than I do. I'm like, I'll hit record and I will walk around and talk to myself in the dark. But as soon as it's time to listen to it, I'm like,
yeah,
John, you want to do that?
Like you're better at editing stuff, and I'm better at just going through and listening and trying to
listens.
find, for sure.
Find the anomalies.
Right.
Yes.
And see, that's what is different than what you from what we do than what you see on like TikTok and Instagram and social media. We don't go in and just do a live and call it the day. We do put together a historical documentary of each of the locations that we go to, and then we couple that with any unexplained evidence that we capture during the night. And so it's very tedious to go through. So if we've got 10 hours of investigations and I've got 10 voice recorders, I'm actually listening to 100 hours. We don't put it through any software. We don't put it through any audio visual manipulation software at all. We listen to it and we watch it in the raw as it was recorded. So it takes us about 2 months to go through everything and then put together the documentary and the video.
So you said you don't put it through any software. So for the video aspect, do you think there might be layers that could be captured with a different kind of like video overlay, if that makes sense?
It's possible. I do know that there's other teams that use different type of light spectrums and such during their investigations, and it is possible. For me and for what we do, we just use the simple night vision recorders, basically night vision video cameras that we have set up. We have about 12 of those. And I want to keep it, and this is just for us personally, we want to keep it as raw as possible, right? To have that experience as if we were sitting there watching that room or we were sitting in there listening to that room. It is possible probably to get something different. We just haven't tried anything like that. And that's just kind of what our style has been.
I was just curious. I don't know how to do any of that. But I was like,
you sounded like you did. Putting me on the spot for a minute.
I was just curious. I was just curious if that's a thing. Because you do hear of people that run it through different spectrums and all of those things, and so I was just more so curiosity. I am not a specialist. John has been getting me more and more into the investigation world. I've been experiencing paranormal personally probably my entire life, but I've never been one to be like, let's document it. And you meet John and John's just like, let's document it. So,
and Ash is like, no, let's don't. So let's run away.
I know. Let's run out screaming. No, it's a good pairing, but yeah. So for me, I'm very green when it comes to the equipment. And I
Mhm.
always call the equipment the wrong name anyways. John's so patient with me. I'm just like, yeah, that REM pod. He's like, that's a K2. And so it's just,
I
Yeah.
still do it, so it's all right. You know, it happens.
That thing that
I'm like,
lights up.
hand me the little cat ball thing.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly. The cat toys. Give me the cat balls.
Yeah, give me the cat toys. So it just like I think the one paranormal investigation tool that I'm not a fan of are the talking teddy bears.
The Boo Bears.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of those. It just and oddly enough, that probably is one of the few things that actually produced um something
Some
of evidence
evidence,
for
yeah.
us.
Which was funny because we were just super annoyed with it. We're like, nope, shut up, boo buddy. We don't care.
I was like,
It's hot in
making fun
here.
of it.
It's cold. Like, no, shut up.
They're like, is it getting hot in here? I'm like, yes, because heat rises and just,
She kept snapping back at it. It was great. I loved it.
but when it was doing math, it actually was funny because the person who owned the house, she actually went through the recordings later and the direct feeds and caught that. I wasn't going to. That would have been a John thing, but she sends it to me from one of the angles. And she's like, what do you make of this? And you hear the bear, and it's just like, what's 2 + 2? And you hear a male's voice kind of in the distance say 4.
Wow.
And
That's
and
awesome.
for me, I'm like, that had to have been John. And I knew John's camera was on we were streaming to Facebook and Instagram. So I'm
wow.
like,
Yeah.
John's camera was on Instagram. I'm going to go check Instagram. So I go pull his camera around that time, and it should have been right there if it was him. He had been holding it right next to him
Mhm.
on his phone. And, you hear the, what's 2 + 2? And you hear 4. But this time it's from a different side of the room. So it
Wow.
wouldn't have come from him
That's awesome.
or us. I know. And it was just a very quick 4. And it's like, oh my gosh, ghosts can math.
And we were both talking over it anyway. So like we were both, like you said, you were being a smart ass
We're
anyway.
just
So we were both
chatting.
just sitting
Yeah.
there, and it did it. And I saw the cat. All cats love our podcast. So
Yeah,
it's
this
good to
is-
see another one.
This is Sally, Sally the jail cat. She
Nice.
is the mascot here at the historic Scott County Jail. She has her own Instagram page, and she's got her own T-shirt
Nice.
line here at the gift shop. So she's our girl.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's
Now,
awesome.
do you rent the gel out?
We do.
For investigations?
We do. So during the day, we have daytime tours. We actually have an audio tour that I mimicked after Alcatraz.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's actually really cool. So we have a day tour or a historic museum during the day, and then what we call a paranormal research center at night. So we've had over 150 teams come and investigate. We've been open since the fall of 2021. So we've had over 150 teams here so far. And I got to say, almost every single one has left with some type of a compelling story of evidence that they've captured here. As I mentioned earlier, we're listed as the top 5 haunted location in Tennessee right now. So people routinely get footsteps, disembodied voices, doors slamming. If you go to our Facebook page, you can actually see some doors opening, some shadow figures that we've captured. So it's a pretty active jail.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And Tennessee has a lot of history. So to
Yeah,
be
it
in the
does.
top 5, that says something.
It does. So, and it's one of those things where my business partner is Miranda from Ghost Biker Explorations, and we met through the paranormal. She had her show, Soul Sisters. We had our show, and we were kind of watching each other. And finally, I reached out to her and I said, "Hey, I really like your style." So we became really good friends. And through a series of life events and such, because we met. God, about 5 years ago now. So through a series of life events and stuff, she's from this area. She was born and raised here. Through some COVID deaths in her family and some other situations, she had to move back here to Scott County. And she knew the jail was vacant. And she said, she asked me, would you want to move up from Florida and open this business with me? And I said, museum in the middle of a pandemic? What could go wrong there? I mean, perfect business plan. So I said, yeah, let's try this. So we gave ourselves a couple years to see if we could make it work. And it's really exceeded our expectations for sure. It's one of those things where you kind of go into it for the first time, and it's really weird to say, but you're like praying, God, please let this be haunted. And really weird to say that, but I mean, we walked in night one, and she and I spent several nights here for the first couple weeks because we got the keys about a month before we opened. So we would just come in here and just sit and talk to our spirit. Tell them, we told them what was going on, who we were, what we were planning on doing. We ran the whole business plan through all of our spirits, told them what we were going to do, and like I said, from night one, we were getting voices, footsteps, whistling, intelligent responses to our questions. So we knew then that we really had something special. Since then, the teams that have come in, like I said, capture things and they're kind of blown away.
That's super cool. Do you have any rules in place for teams that come in terms of like how they
Oh,
respect
yeah.
the spirits
Mhm.
or approach their investigations?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we tell them first and foremost that the history is really important. If they're going to do any type of documentary or any type of explanation about the history of the jail, that they're required to take a history tour with us. Takes about 20 minutes. We go through it, make sure they have the history correct. That they're not allowed to provoke. They can't do any type of séance or Ouija boards or cleansing or anything like that. And we absolutely have a no demonic policy. There are no demons in this location. If you're somebody that you subscribe to that, this isn't the place for you. Because we do not have demonic activity, and we make them sign a waiver. We have our lawyers on standby. If you say something is demonic here, we will sue you for libel and slander. You have to acknowledge that, and we will fine you as well. So we're very strict on that.
No summoning demons.
No summoning them and no saying that they're here. We're
Right.
literally in the buckle of the Bible Belt, and the aldermen and the mayor of this town are very gracious in allowing us to do this, and we're not just going to tarnish this building and its reputation because somebody thinks that there's a demon walking through here when we know there's not.
Well, like you said, the sensationalism. Somebody
That's
thinks
exactly
that
right.
will get
Yeah,
the
that's
views.
exactly right. I mean, we investigated a location in Ohio, and but we were talking to the docent as he was giving us the history tour, and he said we went up to the attic of this location, and there happened to be a dead pigeon there in the attic, and he said, yeah, the team before you, they verified that it was a demonic pigeon. What are you talking about? A demonic pigeon? He's like, oh yeah. I mean, they documented it was it's a demonic pigeon, so we're going to leave it here, and it has to kind of disintegrate naturally because it's a demonic pigeon. I said that is the most absolutely asinine thing I've ever heard, and so that, to your point, sensationalism. When you've got teams talking about demonic pigeons, I think we've really kind of gone down
What
that
is
road.
a demonic pigeon?
Yeah,
I
don't
mean,
ask me.
pigeons can be jerks, but like
Yeah, no,
demonic.
this
Come on.
one was demonic, and they had to,
Oh Lord.
apparently, according to the team, they had to leave it lay where it laid, and
Oh goodness.
I just thought, this is, where have we gone, paranormal community? And so, to your point, it and don't get me wrong, if that's how people want to investigate, if that's what they feel they need to do to get the likes, the subscribers, to what the accolades, whatever you think you need to do, if that's how you want to investigate, that's fine. Just know that you can't do it here. That is our one big stipulation that we abide by religiously.
I feel like I need to start a band called the Demonic Pigeons.
Or I was gonna say it's a good movie idea right there for a good B movie.
Hey, there you go.
There you go. Talk about like D movie.
Listen, I see it. It's one of those where we put the GoPro on the pigeon and we go through the life, and then we find out how it becomes demonic, and
little murdery pigeon.
There
like,
you go.
Out.
There you go.
There you go.
That gives found footage a whole other thing. There.
Hey, there you go. There you go.
I mean, I have been to a location where they, I stumbled across a room where they were capturing, they had cages and they were capturing pigeons to sacrifice them. And that was disturbing.
Yeah.
So that was sad. Like, that just, you don't want to ever see animals be harmed for stuff like that.
No, absolutely not.
Or you don't want to see them harmed at all, but especially for something like that, that's ridiculous. So,
yeah.
But the demonic pigeon, just that idea is absolutely absurd and hilarious.
Well, and like I said,
pigeon's revenge.
There you go. It's just one of just an example of kind of the absurdity of it. I find it hard to believe that. I mean, my team has been to most of the most haunted locations in the country, and we have not come across one thing that is demonic, malicious, evil, or anything like that. It doesn't happen with the frequency that some of these people are saying it happens. And to me, I think that's what gives the paranormal community an interesting name as far as a subculture, and I just think I don't. The people that I know that are in my paranormal community, that's just not how we operate.
That might also just speak to what you're vibrating out, like law
Mhm.
of attraction. Everywhere you're going, you're putting out a very specific intention. So you're kind of vibrating back what you've put out, which
Mhm.
might be why you have the positive experiences you do.
Yeah.
And for those that are like, everything's demonic, either one, it's probably a mixture of sensationalism, but two, also, it might just be you're ringing, you're bringing back what you're ringing out. So
Oh
if
yeah.
they're going in with specific intentions, or they're going in a state of hyper fear, like I'm going to see a demon,
Hmm.
chances are you're going to see a demon. So,
Right, or perceive that you
or
are,
perceive
right?
it that it's
Right,
a demon.
right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we did have one guest here at one time, and the way the jail is set up, obviously, we have maximum security cells. They're all made out of steel. If you slam one door, the reverberation through the cell block is going to happen, right? It's all steel. It's going to reverb, and
Right.
I mean, he slammed it. His REM pod goes off 4 cells down, and he just went ballistic, just crazy. And we just had to tell him, listen, it's the reverb that's causing this. So let's bring it down a notch. It's nothing evil.
Take it
It's
easy.
yeah, it's the reverb. And so that's for us. And the paranormal investigators that I know, those true paranormal investigators who are in it for the research, that's how we operate. We go in with almost a debunking mindset. Let's find a natural cause for this. That's why when we go to an investigation, we always take a day tour first, because I want to know where those those environmental pollution spots are going to happen, light pollution, noise pollution, anything like that. Where are those things going to happen? Where are they going to come from? So if we experience them during the night, I thought there was somebody in the window. Then I can say it's
Maybe
not.
there is.
If those things happen during the night, I can say it's environmental. It's not paranormal. So I'll give you a quick example. We were asked to investigate this business in Ocala, where I'm from, Ocala, Florida. So we were called in to investigate this business. This guy called me up, and he was adamant that his business was haunted. He said that he had just gotten this item in, and he believes it had some evil intentions behind it. His store sold different little things, but it was a storefront. It was a long store. Had mirrors down the side. It had a glass, storefront, and he was just totally convinced that this was haunted, and because his cameras started going off at night and doing different things. And so he called us in, and we spent about 4 hours there, and we weren't getting anything. We weren't feeling anything. We weren't picking up anything. None of our equipment was going off. Like, what is going on here? And so we set up some of our night vision cameras, and we left. So we let him run through the rest of the night, and we left. So I called him the next morning when he opened the business, and I said, did you have any activity after we left? Oh yeah, everything was going off. Our cameras are going off. Da, 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 da. And I said, okay, give me the timestamps of when your cameras were going off, and I'm going to cross-reference them with my cameras. So we did that. And what we found was the way his storefront was situated, he was running perpendicular to a road with a high volume of U-turn traffic. And so when the cars would make a U-turn, the headlights would go into his storefront, hit the mirror, and essentially blind his night vision camera to the point where the camera would turn off and turn back on. So he perceived that as something haunted because he wasn't kind of following of what led this up to the camera going off. He just knew the cameras were going off. And so when you follow it through, it's just the light play. And I told him, either remove the mirrors or position your cameras where they're not going to get the reflection from the mirrors. And he did that, and all the activity stopped. And so for us, you need to find those environmental factors first. Don't slam the cell doors in a steel jail cell because it's going to reverb. That's what's causing that. So you've got to find those connections first. And then what you're left with is what we call the unexplainable. And so I don't think, those people who are in it for the instant gratification or just those quick lives, I don't think that they go in with that mindset. Again, not to say that those that just strictly investigate on lives or anything like that they're wrong. It's just different than what we do.
Yeah, I love that you approach it with the healthy level of skepticism,
Mhm.
because, like you said, then it makes it even a little bit more finite when something is unexplainable.
Mhm.
Like, look, we have exhausted what we can think of. this is where we're at. This is the moment where it's like, I really don't know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty cool.
You're right.
Lives, I think, are really hard
They are.
to do any kind of thorough investigation
Mm-hmm.
because you're in that moment, you're going room to room to room. So it's kind of hard to take a pause and say, okay, we got to debunk this, or we got to try. What could that be? You know, when you have time, right? When you have time with the location, or you have days with a specific area, you can, like you said, set up and kind of repeat and see what's going on. And I know that's not always a luxury when you have 4 hours
Right.
somewhere, but when you have the capability, that's when you can really flush out that skepticism to see what is this.
Mhm.
And so I think it's neat that you approach it that way.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and for us, that's just what we do. Not saying it's the best, the greatest, whatever, the all grand poobah of investigations. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that's what we do. Because there are people that's all they do is lives, and that's fantastic. Like I said, if that's what you want to do, if you want to investigate that way. But we also, a very big part of what we do, as I said before, is the historical factor. So we want to tell the entire history of the location. So, for example, a lot of people go to the Lizzie Borden house and they go based on, the rhyme. Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her family however many whacks. But for us, we want to hear the whole conclusion. What led up to this? What happened after this, right? I mean, not many people follow through the conclusion that, once she was found innocent, she never left Fall River. She moved to another house and she stayed there until she was 62. And that's when she passed away. And so when you know those type of things, it really makes the history more complete for the location. For example, another example, my twin sister and I, we investigated the USS North Carolina earlier this year. And so I really wanted, this is a great location. It's a battleship in Wilmington, North Carolina. And I really wanted to do the history of this battleship service. So I put together a very, probably my most extensive documentary of that battleship. And we had people that don't even believe in the paranormal that were reaching out saying, I love what you did with the history. I don't really believe in the paranormal, but what you did with the history and how you showcased it, I didn't even know that about the North Carolina. And so if we had people saying that, that's what is important to me. As long as the history is preserved, if we can get more people going to these locations and getting that revenue in there to preserve the location, that's what our job is.
I love that about, I went to the Winchester Mystery House earlier this year, and that I loved that they did that. It really is about the history of how the house was built when she moved there. I mean, yes, do they talk about the spirits and what could have propelled or inspired her to do the different things with the house that she did, but I love that they don't lean too heavily on that. They kind of let that speak for itself because we already go in with those preconceived notions.
Right.
But they really just talk about how the history of how she did things, the timeline, but also I think the human element. They're just like, guys, she lost her family. She lost, a kid. She was lonely. She wanted family. And so you start to really put a human element to her versus like, this is some crazy woman. This is a human. And maybe all of this was born out of grief. Maybe all of this is born out of something that isn't, I'm building this house to confuse all these 100,000 spirits that are trying to get me. Like, it just, I don't know. I really like their approach to it. Do they deny their ghosts? No. But they're not trying to sensationalize it. It's like, let's just let the history speak for itself.
Yeah, that's exactly right. When Miranda and I first opened this location, that was something that we wanted to do. So this jail was built in 1904. It was in operation as a jail until 2008. And then it sat vacant really until we opened the museum in 2021. And what we wanted to do was we want the history to be the focal point. So if you look at our website, if you look at any of our branded items, the history is what drives this. The paranormal is the engine, the economic engine behind it that is paying our bills. So when we do podcasts like this, yes, we say it's haunted. If you're just somebody coming down the road and you see the historical marker, you come in and first thing you're hit with is history, not paranormal. It's not until most people come down from the third floor and they ask, is this place haunted? And we say yes. And then we go into it. To your point, that was the entire impetus for what we did here. And that's as we get other locations that we work with and we partner with, that's also our main motivating factor, is to let the history be the driver and let the paranormal be the engine behind it.
I love that approach. That's really
Well,
neat.
thank you.
Yeah, that's really cool. So now that Soul Sisters has been around for 10 years, do you still do the retreats just as your core group, or do you also lead investigations for other people as well?
Well, that's a great question. So we started out as a group of 5 ladies. So it was myself, my twin sister, our younger sister, and then 2 female family friends. Really after COVID, just because of, again, life circumstances, it really became my twin sister and I as the investigators. Now, Michelle, our younger sister, and our friends will join us on certain investigations, but some of them got a new job, one had a grandbaby. So it's just, you know, we've kind of moved on a little bit past the group of 5. So for the last year and a half, really, Jenny and I have been the 2 investigators. So we do take special guests sometimes, like when we did Hillview Manor, we had our 2 twin friends with us, and then we'll lead investigations here at the jail and some other locations as well. We're trying to get one down in Orlando, but mostly it's just us doing the investigations.
Really cool. So, for people that are interested in your historical documentation and investigations, where can they find you?
So our website is www.soulsistersparanormal.com. So anything, all of our documentaries are on there. All of our investigations are on there. We actually have what I call a spin-off series called Landmarks, Legends, and Lore, which focuses on different interesting and reportedly haunted locations, but we don't do an investigation at them. I just talk about them. So that's on there. Anything you want to know about us personally is on there. And then Facebook is Soul Sisters Paranormal, and YouTube is under Soul Sisters Paranormal. And then if you want to know more about the historic Scott County Jail, our website is www.historicscottcojail.com, and then Historic Scott County Jail on Facebook.
If you had to pick one piece of advice to give to people that want to get into the paranormal investigations, what is something you would tell someone?
Honestly, I would say first and foremost, go into it with the right intentions, and by that I mean go into it with the idea of, 1, preserving history, and 2, communicating with spirits. I mean, if you want to go into it to just be scared in a cemetery on a Friday night, that's really, in my mind, not the right intentions. And then after that, have patience, because as John will tell you as well, it's not this, you go into every room and you're getting an EVP or a light anomaly. 9 times out of 10, we don't experience anything at these locations. It's not until we go back and listen to our audio and video that we even know we captured anything. So there's a lot of patience involved in this as well. So I think those are the 2 things that I would recommend.
Now, is there one place, and I know you probably have a whole list, but is there one place that's on your bucket list to go to investigate that you're like, man, I really want to get there?
Yeah, Leap Castle in Ireland. That is my bucket list location. I would love to get over there. I've traveled internationally, but not as a paranormal investigator. So if I could go over to Europe, that'd be the first place that I would investigate, Leap Castle.
I'd like to go anywhere in Romania.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, you can't probably walk down the street in Romania and not find a spirit.
Just like anywhere there, that I would be there for.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You did bring up cemeteries. People want to scare themselves into cemetery, but the idea of cemeteries came up. Have you done many, if any, investigations in cemeteries?
A few, not anything that's like long term that we have a documentary for. We've gone to cemeteries and done just investigations on our own. For me, they're really not that active. I don't think that there's a lot, just again for me personally, of spirits that reside there in cemeteries. Now there's some that are different, something like Arlington, or there's the Huguenot Cemetery in St. Augustine that comes to mind. I just think by their very nature that they have some energy there, different energy. But I think cemeteries just hold a different type of energy, not something that's an intelligent haunting per se. It's more like So, for example, going into a funeral home, not too many people have died in a funeral home, but they're there because they're dead, and the mourners are there because of the dead. And I think that location holds that energy, that powerful emotion, and I think that's why funeral homes are haunted. Same thing with cemeteries, right? So if you have locations that have a lot of like military, like Gettysburg or something like that, I think you'll have that type. But to answer your question very long-windedly, we've done several cemeteries, but nothing that has any location that we've gone to that gives us a lot of evidence.
That is such an interesting perspective that I never considered.
Mhm.
Like the mourning.
Yeah.
It's the mourners that bring in,
Mhm.
call in the spirits versus like this is a dead body here. That with whether it's a funeral home or a cemetery
Mhm.
or a morgue or anything like that. It's like
Mhm.
it's not the bodies, it's the fact that we have these intense emotions
Mhm.
that are kind of bringing that in. So, that's a very interesting perspective. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, because you have to understand, obviously, and I think you get it, that energy, that just our emotions itself, that's energy, and right, and we can produce a lot of things. I know, and this just popped into my mind. We're coming up tomorrow on the anniversary of 9/11, and I remember right after 9/11, the next year, I had seen a study, and don't ask me where because I can't remember where it was, but there was a study that the emotions of the world on that day were measured. They were measurable. And because so many people were grieving and the world collectively was just watching this and having these visceral reactions to what was going on, that it was actually a measurable energy shift. And so, same thing on a very small scale, you go into a funeral home and you have all of these mourners, that energy is there. You go into a cemetery where all these mourners are, that energy is there. And I think the stones and the ground and everything hold that energy, not the spirit of the person who's there.
That makes so much sense. Like that the earth itself, the stones hold the energy. We've talked about crystals, we've talked about rocks, and it's just like, we do talk about their capability to hold, absorb, conduct energy. And that's just science, different materials. So the fact that it would, the very earth, the stones within the earth would be holding these different energies that happen in those shifts. Like, wow, you're blowing my mind here, Kris. You're blowing my mind.
It's just, it's one of those things that you just kind of have to think about as well. Just kind of when you think of the paranormal in general or holistically, I mean, what are those causes? Why? And that's why we research, right? What are doing that? So, for example, and I'll just go back to this one real quick. The jail that I'm in, it's completely made out of sandstone bricks. So the bricks are 4 feet by 5 feet by 6 feet thick, and that's the entire building. And sandstone has quartz, which is a natural energy conductor. So if you think about it, we're in one big energy vortex essentially. And so I think that's why this building is so active, right? The energy is held here. And so you have to think about those things. You have to look at the environment that you're in. You have to, what is the building made of? What is the surrounding area? What happened here? And you've got to take all of those things into account. And then that will lead you, when you research further, I think that will lead you to the unexplained things that are happening here.
That like opens just a totally new nerdy world for me. And it's very exciting because I love rocks. I love the crystals. I love just all of that stuff, the components of like geology, and just this idea that like if you go to a spot that has a high level of activity or feels high level of just energy, maybe it's not even paranormal activity, just energy. It's just like, what is this building made of? What's the soil composition?
Yeah.
Like, what are we working with? Like, never even thought about that. Again, blowing my mind.
Water, and just put it in there too. Water is a very big thing. We've got a river that's running about 40 yards behind us. So we've got that going for us as well. So water is a big energy conductor also. So you just got to look at all of those factors. And I think, like I said, those of us in the paranormal community that are really in it for this scientific purpose, that's what we do, right? We look at these things and try to figure out what is the commonality here. Are buildings that are made of this certain structure or this certain component, are they more active? And how do we measure that? And so I think that's where paranormal investigations are going, more of a research-based mindset to really try to figure out what's going on.
All right, John, next investigation you do, take a soil sample.
Soil sample. Hey, you're coming with whether you like it or not. Let's go.
Unless it's a cemetery. Don't take soil
Yeah,
samples from
please don't.
cemeteries.
No,
And if you
no,
do,
no.
I did
I
not
won't.
endorse it.
No,
I
no.
don't endorse it either. We don't take grave dirt.
I'm not
That's
touching
not.
anything in a cemetery. No,
Yes.
thank you.
Amen.
I've had enough experiences in that. Nope, we're good.
Amen.
Yeah.
Oh man, this hour has gone by so quickly, Kris. I have loved talking to you, and I really this has been fantastic. Is
Thank
there
you.
anything else you'd like to add before we wrap this up?
No, I just appreciate everybody tuning in, and thank you both for having me here tonight.
Yeah, this has been great. John, do you have anything to add?
No, other than we need to get our butts over there and start investigating. So, yeah, let's go.
You're welcome anytime.
All right, John Thomas, you want to bring us home?
I do, I guess. No, I'm just kidding. No, thank you again, Kris. Seriously, it's been amazing. And it's always good to hear another investigator's perspective on things and how they do things. So it's pretty cool. I think we all kind of learn from each other, like you said in the beginning with the shows. We kind of learned a little bit off of that and then went our own way for the most part. I think all the teams did. So it's cool to hear other perspectives and to have that out in the world for everybody else to hear as well. So thank you again for that.
Thank you.
And thank you for all of our listeners for listening to this episode of 3Haunted Podcast with your host. I'm John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
And I always forget this part.
If you have any,
yeah. If you have any questions, comments, episode suggestions, geez, one of these days I'll get it right. Please feel free to email us at 3hauntedpodcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so already, please like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media. Also, check out our website at 3hauntedpodcast.com. And
you don't want to miss one crazy moment.
that's it. One of these days I'll get something in there.
4 seasons in, you'll get it.
4 seasons in, I still mess it up.
I do want to add, Kris mentioned when you go into a house, you're just like, or when you bought the place, it was, please let it be haunted. And for me, anytime I move into a house, the first thing I say is, please don't let it be haunted. Please don't let it be haunted.
Aw.
But she ended up with a haunted one, didn't you?
You hush. Until next time.